Hey Bookaholics, so welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you series continued. In my last video, I went through all of the series that I either binged or attempted to binge and then DNF'd in the 12 months that comprises 2023. So these are instead some of the series that I have started. So I'm going to go through them. It's going to be timestamped accordingly. And the sections that we have this time are series that I am up to date on. So these are series I could not binge because I have read all that is out, but the series is not concluded. Then I have series that I have started, series that I had no intention of binging, or at least weren't at the forefront of my mind for binge reading. So they are series that I have started, but I can read more. There are more available installments. Next, I will go into series that I have DNF'd. These are series that I didn't really intend on binging, or the series isn't out in its entirety, but I am DNFing the series at the installment that I read. I have series that I started a previous year but concluded this year. Series that I am planning on slowly continuing through, so they will be on series lists for quite a while to come. And then finally, I have the Amazon short story collections that I started this year. I normally hold up physical copies of books in my videos. However, there is actually some construction happening and I have a very brief window of time in which they are not using powered tools. I'm going to make the most of that and try and fly through this. Therefore, I am not going to be holding up each individual book because it actually takes longer to film. So editing me is going to hate this. Hopefully it'll be quicker this way. We're going to start with the series that I am up to date on. And the first of those is actually a middle grade, and that is the Garland Greatheart series. This is a series that I have been receiving as arcs to review. I've been really loving this series. It's epic fantasy, but middle grade. So if you took all of the trappings that you love normally of epic fantasy, you have farm boy going on a quest, saving the world, but you make it middle grade and you have all of these magical creatures, magical beings, these epic plot lines, but just with lower, well, it actually has hugely high stakes, but obviously it's in middle grade, so you know things are going to end up well. So it's just a really, really good combination. So if you're wanting to slowly indoctrinate your children into epic fantasy, this series is actually a really good way to go. And the series is written by Mark Cushion. Mark's a lovely dude and I have been really enjoying this series. It's a trilogy. I've read the 2 books that are out. The next one is a series that I cannot wait for more installments in. That is the JM Puppet Master by K.S. Veloso. The first book, Outlaw Mage, came out last year. I got an arc for it. I was very, very excited. It was literally the best thing. Oh, it made my year. I'm so happy. I loved that book so much. K.S. Veloso fast became one of my absolute favourite authors last year. I read 6 books by her. Loved everything that I read, including this one. Only book 1 is out so far, but what a way to start a series. Cannot wait for the rest of it. Another K.S. Veloso series that I am up to date on. I believe that the author is just writing like several standalones that are set in the Blackwood Marauders part, which is another K.S. Veloso series. The Blackwood Marauders is, I think, K.S. Veloso's playing field where she can experiment with the world that she's created. So I've read the 2 installments that are out so far. More are to come. I am part of her newsletter. She has said that there are more to come. But at the moment, there are only 2 out and I have read both of them and I love them both. The next one I have is the Sin Eater series by J.R. Snyder. This is one that I actually put in my cozy fantasy series recommendations. I love this series. Whenever one comes out, I'm desperate to read them. They're a lovely, heartwarming hug of a series while still being funny, fun. There's like decent action, decent plot. It's just got a lot going for it. But within the fantasy sphere, normally series that have a lot going for them are very traumatic, and this is just a really lovely reprieve. So I love this series so much. I read the newest installment, which came out last year, which was Songs of Bone, which is a ghost ship inspired installment. Had a really good time with it. Whenever any more come out, sign me up. The next series that I started was The Hoop of Alexuin. I'm not sure how I'm pronouncing this. But yes, this is a series that I started. I struggled with it slightly, but I'm still really interested to continue the series. However, only 1 book is out at the moment. I don't know if and when more are coming out, but as it currently stands, I have read the 1 and only book that is in the series. Another one that was initially written as a standalone, and then it was said that it was going to be part of like a series of standalones, but then no other book books have actually come out since then, and that is The Riven World by M.L. Spencer. The first book is Dragon Maid, which is the one that I read. It's the only book out so far. I really liked it, so I'd be happy to read more, but at the moment there are no more, and I feel a little bit kind of like I went in with the knowledge that there's going to be more, which made me hungry for more, and there are no more. So this is where I'm at the moment. One that I am up to date on. I'm part of the ARC team for this series. I've been doing a terrible job. I review them on Goodreads, but that's it. I am part of the ARC team though, and that is The Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. Probably the most famous, most popular self-pub that is ongoing at the moment. It's a great series. It's Eragon for adults. I pinched that from the Brothers Gwyn. It's a really fun series. The first one I liked but didn't love. But as the series goes on and it becomes its own thing, the same way Wheel of Time was originally just an homage to Tolkien and then becomes its own thing, that's very much what Ryan Cahill's series is. It's an homage to Eragon and then blossoms into its own beautiful thing. And the thing is, when I read Eragon, I was like, I love this, but now as an adult, I really just want to go darker, to go deeper, to be more extensive. And then Ryan Cahill was like, look, I hear you. And thank you, sir, because it's a fantastic series. I don't need to hype it up. No one needs to hype it up. It's already hyped. It deserves every single drop of hype that it has. And last year I read Of War and Ruin, which is the longest book that I read last year. And I also read The Ice, which is the newest novella. Every year Ryan Cahill gets out a mammoth of a fucking book and also gets out a novella, and I have read both. Another one that I am up to date on, I am always up to date on by release date because I tend to get arcs, and I love this series with my entire being. It's one of my favourite self-published series out there, and that is The Dragon Spirits by L.L. McRae. The second book, The Shadow Gate, came out last year. I fucking love this series. It is epic fantasy. A, in the most unique way I've read fantasy. B, dragons, and they are the coolest dragons ever. Writing style is so digestible, so addictive. I absolutely fly through these books. I make myself slow down so I have book 2 savor, because I know that book 3 isn't coming out until 2025, and that hurts. So I tried to read book 2 really slowly and it didn't work. So it's just a fantastic series to get into. I loved it, and I would highly recommend you check it out if you're looking for some self-pub, but do bear in mind that book 3 isn't coming out until 2025, so you're gonna be sad. And the other one that I was up to date to by the end of 2023 was, of course, Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. I read book 2, which is House of Sky and Breath, last year, and I was thoroughly disappointed. It was on my disappointing books of 2023 list, so if you're curious, it's on there. It didn't live up to book 1. Book 1 I thought was really good, and then the thing that I loved most about book 1, which was this friendship, not the romance, it was the friendship, got manipulated and played with in a way I didn't like in book 2. And then also the ending of book 2, like many, I am a bit hesitant how I feel about it, so we'll see. Now we're going to go into series that I have started but I'm not up to date on, and I will also let you know whether or not this is a complete series or not. So we're going to start with the Heart of Quinaria series. It is an ongoing series, but I only read the prequel novella. I've not read any of the core novels yet, but I am really excited to be getting into this series because the prequel was very enticing. I think that it's going to be one of those series that I might wait until all of the installments are out and then binge them. Now that I've had a taste test and know I like it, I don't mind purchasing them and binging them. In a similar vein, I also read the prequel novella to the Age of Darkness series by Stephen Arion. I do have the rest of Age of Darkness here on the shelf. I am planning on reading them this year, but last year I only read the prequel novella. One that is out in its entirety that I started is The Keeper Chronicles. This is by J.A. Andrews. This is one that I liked the first book. I will continue. I wasn't absolutely obsessed with it, but I am curious to see how it continues. And I am hoping that we get some answers and some things rounded up a bit better as the series goes on. I know it is a series of series as well. I have the first trilogy, so then I'm looking at potentially getting to the rest of the series afterwards if I like this first trilogy. Another one that is out, I believe, in its entirety is the Brightest Shadow series by Sarah Lynn. This is one that I think I was really into it, but there was some things that were a bit confusing. It was a bit more action-centered than I usually like, but it was so unique and it had so many original thoughts and ways that it tackled tropes that we love as well. Felt very original. So I'm really glad that I read it, and it's a fantastic contribution to the indie sphere, because one of the things I love about indie is the way they change up the genre, and that's exactly what this provided me with. So I'm looking forward to continuing with the series. I need breaks in between because they're quite intense, but not too long of a break so I don't forget things and have to reread the previous one. The next one that I started was the Souls trilogy by Harley LaRue. It's interesting because I started the Souls trilogy in February, didn't continue, then picked up another series by Harley LaRue and binge read that instead. So I did finish a Harley LaRue series last year, just not the one that I initially started. But the Souls trilogy is a trilogy of 3 different pairings of romance set in the same world in this town. It's demon romance. It does have the elements of monster romance when it comes to anatomy as well, so do bear that in mind. I had a really good time with the first one. I plan on continuing. I have the other 2 books. It just, when I was in a romance mood, the synopses of The Dare sounded more interesting to me at the time when I got in the mood for it. So I read The Dare and then proceeded to read The Losers instead. But that was it. It wasn't necessarily that I was DNFing the series or that I couldn't be bothered with the series. I have to be in the right mood for romance because otherwise I just sit there rolling my eyes. So when the mood struck, I read the series instead. Another one I have started but I'm definitely not up to date on is the Lunaria series, also by L.L. McRae. I read this first book, Marauder, as my trying to read an indie book every month throughout 2023. I failed at my challenge because migraines, but I did have a good time reading this book. I really love L.L. McRae's world building. The thing is, what's great is that from what I have read of her 2 series is that you can tell they are L.L. McRae because they are epic fantasy, and I mean that in every single sense of the word, but tonally, they have a very specific tone that is both going to give you grief and fear, and it's going to feel epic and you feel the stakes, but at the same time, they are laced with this level of levity that makes the reading experience really, really enjoyable without diminishing your emotions. It doesn't make you overlook the gravitas of a situation just because it has a bubbly tone, but at the same time, it has enough of a happy tone or a compellingly fun tone that you want to keep reading. They're really fun fantasy like that. The Lunaria series reminds me more of like Stardust by Neil Gaiman. It's a lot of fun. I had a really good time with the first book. I plan on continuing. The series is not entirely out yet. I do believe that L.L. McRae intends on concluding it soon-ish, but I'm glad I have more L.L. McRae books to read, I'm not gonna lie. So when the migraine struck, which I believe was just after Marauder, I didn't pick up ebooks for a while, and then when I did, I picked up really light-hearted ones like The Dare. Now that I am back into reading epic fantasy in digital form, now that I've been having less migraines, I am hoping to continue on with this series soon. Another one that I'm hoping to continue with soon, because I had a really good time with it, is the Mages of the Wheel series by J.D. Evans. And this is a fantasy romance series, and it is fantastic because it is a fantasy romance. It is an even split of the 2. If you're a romance fan, you are going to get catered to. But if you are a fantasy fan, you're going to get catered to. If a fantasy fan reads Sarah J. Maas, it's too much romance. If a romance fan reads Robin Hobb, there's not going to be enough romance in it. This one is a lovely soup of the 2. It combined the 2 to make them both push forward. One of the things I really love about fantasy romance is that it's romance I can enjoy because the stakes that create the reason that characters are pulled apart, the reason that characters can't be together instantly, tend to be related to the stakes of the fantasy world. And the epicness of the fantasy world that was created, and then the characters and the character dynamics, and of course the romance that stems from that, were all absolutely incredibly balanced. I had a really good time with this series, and there are definitely things that I think plot-wise I would like to see more of in the sequels, but as it stands, it was a really good time with the first one and I can't wait to continue. The next one that I have is the Vanguard series. The Vanguard series hasn't concluded. There is only one other book that I've not read. Basically, it's a Gaslamp grimdark fantasy. It's really good. It's murder mystery style. It's everything that Carnival Row could have been if you took away the Fae element and incorporated it just being like dark and magic. so good. I had a really good time with it. I've got a physical copy of it. I would highly recommend you check it out if it's something that seems interesting to you. I need to read the sequel. I own the first book now physically, which means that then I need to wait until I get the next book physically, because I don't want to keep buying the ebook and then the physical book. I own the first one physically, so I will be getting the sequel physically, so I might as well wait, and then when I buy that one, I can read it. Another one I started, and lo and behold, is not concluded, but I'm also not up to date on, is The Kingkiller Chronicles by, who was it again? Patrick Rothfuss. This is one, I actually quite enjoyed it. I had a decent enough time with it. It was fine. I have not continued on with the series because I have no drive to continue on with the series because the series has not concluded. I'm not going to go purchase the next book because flipping cover changes happen all the time, and there is a tiny part of me that thinks that even if Rothfuss by some minor miracle does finish this series, when it comes out there's going to be a cover change. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to wait, and then when all of the books ever come out, then I will probably reread the first one and continue on with the series. I started it for a project that I did and it was fine. I am not going to be continuing until the third book is out. Another one that I am just going to kind of read my way through as and when the urge strikes, because there is no end in sight, is A Song of Ice and Fire. I read A Game of Thrones. I only read the first book. There are 5 out, or 7 if you count the fact that some of the books are split in half. There are supposed to be 7 in the series. We haven't seen book 6 in 11 years, 12 years. So the chances of seeing it anytime soon are rather zilch. And then there's one after that. So I can't see it happening. I'm not in a rush to continue this series because there is no motivation for it. It's not going to finish anyway. So when I feel like an epic fantasy off of my shelves, but I don't want like the commitment of binging a series, because a lot of the fantasies that I have are to binge the series, I might pick up a Song of Ice and Fire book. One that I did start, didn't know if I'd continue, and now keep thinking about it and really want to continue, is the Land Fit for Heroes series by Richard Morgan. This is one that when I read it, I had some issues with it, and I was like, okay, it's fine. But I do keep thinking about it, and I see it on my shelf, like, actually? So I do want to get the rest of the books. I do have it in like a really awkward trade paperback, so I might see if there's a box set out there and get these sequels. So I will continue this series. It's just taken me a while to realize that I will continue this series. It was gonna go on the like DNF section, but I keep thinking about it, and I feel like there are so many places that series can go that I actually think, no, I am going to give it a go, and I'm going to keep going with the series. And the last one in this section is the Julia Domna series by Santiago Posteguillo. I read the first book, which is Yo Julia. This is the story of Julia Domna, who was the first empress of Rome, and she's badass, and she has such an interesting story and such an interesting life. I have the sequel. It's in my Spanish jar. When it comes up, I will read it. I'm excited to continue. I had a really good time with this series as well. Like, the writing style was really compelling. I felt excited to continue reading. So it was all round, it was a good time. I'm looking forward to continuing, and when it comes up in the jar, that's exactly what I'll do. I concluded 2 series throughout this year, so they are ones that I had started previously, and I read the conclusion. The first one I read was Bitter, which is the conclusion to the Pet series, or at least as it currently stands, it's the conclusion to the Pet series by Akwaeke Emezi. This is one that I am excited exists in the world, because I think that it has so many important discussions. But I don't think that Bitter was as good as Pet. It also had a very different tone to it in certain aspects. It definitely felt older than Pet to me. We are following a slightly older protagonist as well, and Bitter is actually a prequel because it's about the protagonist of Pet's mum. But overall, I think it was a really good book. It was a really solid series. If more come out, then fantastic, but as far as I'm aware, there's no announcements for it, so I believe it's going to stay as a duology. I don't know really exactly where the series could go from there, so I had a good time with it. I'm glad it exists. I liked Bitter. And the other series that I concluded, which I read out of order, but it doesn't matter, I concluded the Beloved series by Toni Morrison. I had already read both Jazz and Paradise, and the only one I had left to read was Beloved, which I read last year. I love this series. I need to read everything Toni Morrison has ever written. I need to go purchase her bibliography. I had a gorgeous time with this series. It's so heartbreaking. You cannot read these books. Like, I don't think that you are human if you don't sit there and contemplate everything in the universe, sob a little bit, hate life, hate the world but also fall back in love with your life. That's exactly what she does to me every time. It's an out-of-body experience, and I don't think I've read an author like her before, and it's incredible. Now we're going to move on to the series that I DNF'd. I will tell you if the series is out, if there's only one book out, etc. But these are series that from the book that I read, I will not be continuing on with the series. Also, sorry, the construction has restarted. They didn't even give me 20 minutes, so I'm sorry. The first series that I DNF'd was Scythe by Neil Shusterman. It was fine. I didn't dislike Scythe. I just didn't care enough to continue. I am keeping it on my shelves. I think it will be a great one when my kids are older and they are the right age. But I am not really reading YA anymore. And if I do, it's very rare and it's for a very specific reason. And I just didn't care enough about Scythe to push myself to read the rest when there are so many things I'm more excited to read. So it's not really anything Scythe has done wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. I just wasn't invested enough to read 2 more books. Another one that I sadly DNF'd was The City of Steel and Diamonds. I read the first book, kept putting the second one on TBRs, and realised I'm not fussed. What happened is when my kids got to the age where they would start reading middle grade, I started reading a load of middle grade to get like pumped for it, to talk to them about it, to get them excited for it, to see what would suit their tastes, their reading preferences. So I am hoping that when my kids are about to get to the age where they're interested in YA, I will start reading all of the YA that I own again, including ones that I haven't read because I haven't been in the right headspace for them. So I am DNFing this series for the foreseeable future with the knowledge that it's possible that when my kids become closer to the age where they'll be reading the YA age range, I will probably go and read through a load of them to see what would suit each kid. So it's a DNF, but not forever, but for a while. One that is, I think, a permanent DNF. I don't own physical copies of this series. I'm not purchasing any more YA because, again, henceforth, I would only purchase YA for my kids when they are that age. And my kids aren't going to be reading YA in the near future, so they will probably read newer, trendier stuff by then. And that's the Iron Widow series by Xiran Jay Zhao. This is one that I was so disappointed because I was super hyped for this book and it just kind of let me down a bit. And I'm not going to be continuing on with the series, but like I said, I don't think that it will be hyped and exciting and trending by the time my kids get to that point, so I can't see me purchasing it or continuing on with the series ever. Another one I am DNFing, and not for any particular reason other than that I only read it because of who the author is, and that's the Canary House Mystery series by Julie Matheson. I love Julie Matheson's fantasy stuff. She has Vasilisa and Elena the Brave, and I loved those books so much. And I also love her contemporary, which is Believe. However, I was sent an arc of the Canary House Mysteries and I liked it, like it was fine, but mysteries really aren't my thing, and especially middle grade mysteries, they just don't really rock my boat. So I just kind of decided I wasn't going to bother reading the rest of them. My reviews are not going to contribute anything. I think that they would be better suited in the hands of reviewers who are going to really appreciate these books. So I'm going to stick to reading her fantasy and I will leave the mysteries to the appropriate reviewers. Another series I am DNFing is the Dragon Maid series by Raina Nightingale. I read the first book and it was good, like it was nice. It was like a solid 3.5 star. I had a decent time with it. I got offered a review copy of the sequel, but I never really brought myself to reading it. It's a crossover between YA and adult, and it's a very gentle story. There were some holes in the logic that I struggled with. It has a similar plot to if you took Aragon and combined it with Fourth Wing, but like less romance, like no romance, and then you made it like gentle YA. That's kind of what it feels like. So it's definitely got an audience, and it's a shame really that it's not getting more of an audience, but I am not its audience because neither Fourth Wing hasn't gotten to me hype wise. I potentially will read it if I'm in a romance mood. I have a co-worker who has said that it's good, so I'm more interested because she has said so than because of all of the hype on the internet. And then there's also just the Aragon element to it as well, which again, I'd much rather read The Bound and the Broken, which goes darker. So it was a nice series, but I don't think I feel compelled enough to continue when there are other series I'm more excited for. Another series I have DNF'd is a romance series, and that is the Fortuna Sworn series. The series hasn't concluded yet, but it's going to be 6 books. And I mean, I never intended to binge it anyway because it's not all out, so I thought I'll take my time with it. I just didn't care enough about the first book. Like, it's so hyped. And the first book was fine. Like, it was like a solid 3 stars. Like, I don't miss any of the characters. I'm not like scrolling through my Kindle app like, oh, actually I want to continue with that one. Like, I don't care. So with all of the fantasy romance that is out there now, I feel like I would be wasting my time trying to get through this really chunky 6-book series when there are others that I am more interested in reading. Another one that I DNF'd was The Daughter of the Ice. This is one I was sent a review copy of. It's, again, like, it's not a bad series. It's just I'm the wrong audience for it. It's a bit too dude bro for me. It has very macho characters. We have, you know, sultry, evil, wicked villainess kind of going on. And it just, they're all the wrong tropes for me. I can definitely see how guys that read, you know, your very manly, very dude bro epic fantasy would love this series because it is well written. It's a fun series. The plot is fine, but just the tropes that are at its epicenter are not tropes that I enjoy. So I would still recommend, but I am not going to continue. Another one that I DNF'd, which is probably one of my sadder DNFs of the year, is I DNF'd The Lies of Locke Lamora and therefore The Gentleman Bastard series. I couldn't finish Lies of Locke Lamora. I was really struggling to visualize anything. It was just not working for my brain. I couldn't picture anything. And then I was really struggling to connect with the characters. So for the most part, I just really struggled with this book and I ended up giving up. And it's going to be a 6-book series if it ever decides to conclude. And I struggled with the first book. So I came to the conclusion that there was no point in me pushing through the book and no point in me pushing through the series. So I just DNF'd. Another one I didn't know was part of a series, but that I have DNF'd because I DNF'd the first book, is Let the Right One In by John Ajvide Lindqvist. This is a vampire horror, and I was fine with the concept of it, apart from the fact that we do have one of the POVs from the perspective of a pedophile who is repeatedly talking about how hot he finds this like seemingly 11-year-old vampire. I mean, she's a vampire, so she's like 200 years old, but she's in the body of like an 11-year-old or something. And it's really gross, and I did not want to keep reading, and it made me feel really queasy. I literally felt like I was going to throw up in one of the scenes, so I stopped reading. And that's fine. It's a decent enough reason to stop reading, and I DNF'd this book, and therefore I have DNF'd the series. Another one that I have DNF'd for the same reason as the Daughter of the Ice series is that it's a bit too dude bro-y, and that is the Essex Dogs series. The second book came out last year. I got the audiobook for the first book, and I kept zoning out. Like, I'd just be sat there listening and then realize that I had not been listening for about 10 minutes and I didn't care. So it wasn't for me. It was a shame because I really want more historical fiction series to get into, but this was not it. And the last of my DNFs is the One Piece series. I read the first one and I was never intending on finishing this series. I wasn't gonna go dive into reading hundreds and hundreds of volumes of One Piece. For me, this one, it was just a DNF because I picked up the first book to try it out, to see what the series felt like, what the vibes were, what the hype was. I did that. I read that. I enjoyed the first one. It was cute. I understand why people are hyped about it. I do not need to be on that bandwagon. I didn't like it enough to be like, oh yeah, I can totally understand why I would get 100 of these. The first one was cute. I can understand how the vibes work. I can understand how the characters work. That was enough for me. Series I have continued. So series that started the previous year, but series that I'm not up to date on, are the ones that are going to be probably on this video of every year for the foreseeable future, and that is Discworld by Terry Pratchett. I read the second book, and the In Death series by J.D. Robb, which I read, I think, 2 books and a novella in that series. So I have continued them. They are my forever continuing series. They're series that I get to as and when I need a palate cleanser. They're great for readathons, or if I just want a quick read, something short to chuck in my bag, those kinds of things. That's where I read those books, and that's exactly their intended purpose. They're not supposed to be like big brain kind of books, so I use them for when I need them, so I will take my time with them. And then finally, I started 4 Amazon short story collections this year. The first one I started was Trespass, and I also started started Forward, Into Shadow, and Warmer. I started all of these mostly for readathons. I tend to have short stories by authors whose works I am interested in sampling before buying their works, or authors I love and will want to read everything by them. So I've started all of these. I am excited to continue getting through these, but there is no rush. They're not interlinking. I don't need to remember stuff from the previous one. I already read the Black Stars collection in a previous year. I think I finished it in 2022. So, you know, I started a few more and I will read them as and when is convenient. But those are all of the series that I have started, finished, continued, DNF'd, etc. All of the non-binge series are here. So let me know if you've read any of these, your thoughts on them, if there are any that you think I should be prioritizing continuing, if there are like favorites on here, etc. If there are ones that you would advise me to DNF, etc. Let me know your thoughts in general. I always want to know. But that is everything for me for today. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye.